Sheng began to use his power, causing his body to start emitting a powerful golden energy. Upon feeling this energy, the attention of Tan Fei and the man was fixed on him. Tan Fei clenched her teeth tightly, started to look at Sheng, and her eyes filled with panic as she knew he was preparing to attack. The man clenched his fists, turned his head towards her, and with a serious look explained that there were not so many deities in Luang, so he assured that he was false. If both gave their best, they could have a chance to win. Tan Fei started to sweat like crazy. She began to observe Sheng and thought that Wally was right since they were the 10 strongest demons. If they joined forces, it was not possible for them to lose against opponents from Luang who were not even martial saints. Both began to use all their power, causing their eyes to start shining and powerful bursts of fire appeared around their bodies. They decided it was time to attack. Sheng, who was flying in the sky, began to watch them silently. Tan Fei began to stare at him, opened her mouth, started to fill her lungs, and while charging the attack, called Sheng a fraud who used tricks and deceit and ordered him to die. She used her power called Abyss Flames and launched a powerful flame towards Sheng. And as if this were not enough, the werewolf jumped into the flame. As his body was engulfed in flames, he lunged at Sheng, began to extend his claw, and with an angry look used the technique called Blazing Flame Strike. At first Sheng remained silent watching the man, but then closed his eyes, opened his mouth and inhaled air to fill his lungs, and mocked the man, calling him barbaric, and explained that his movements were very weak. Just before the werewolf could attack, Sheng blew a powerful gust of fire from his mouth, which hit the man's body directly, causing him to fly backward. Sheng's power made Tan Fei's flames slowly begin to disappear. Upon seeing this, the man's eyes filled with confusion. He did not know how this was possible. Tan Fei's fire could even burn demons, but Sheng had managed to disperse it with just a breath. Not long after, a purple energy appeared around the man's body, leaving him immobilized. The man's eyes filled with alertness and fear. He quickly realized that this was psychic power, and that Sheng was a psychic master. Our boy kept calm, extended his hand towards him, making a powerful and suffocating purple energy appear in the palm of his hand, explaining that this was divine power. Sheng launched the attack at the werewolf, causing it to hit directly against his body. His bones began to break, making him open his mouth and start screaming in pain. Sheng began to use his power, causing all the bones of the man to start breaking. Tan Fei turned her back on them, clenched her teeth tightly, and her eyes filled with confusion and rage. She couldn't believe that this was really happening. She decided that it was better to escape than fight against a demon like Sheng. Just before she could move, Sheng moved at the speed of light, appeared beside her, and with a calm expression revealed that he was not a demon. Upon sensing his presence, Tan Fei looked to the side, and upon seeing Sheng, she couldn't help but be stunned and start to feel fear, as she knew this was nothing good. Sheng stood in front of her and with a penetrating gaze decided that these barbarians deserved to taste the punishment of dismemberment. At the same time, the high-speed train began to traverse the land like a bullet. Guo Aiying reached Sheng's carriage, and with a surprised expression started looking around, wondering where he had gone and why he still hadn't returned. According to her, this mission couldn't end like this. At that moment, Sheng, who was holding a roll of rope, appeared. He started to look at her with a pleasant gaze and with a smile asked her if something had happened. Upon seeing Sheng, she became somewhat confused as she did not know when he had returned. Sheng rolled the rope into a ball, brought it close to his face, began to observe it, and with a smile explained that he had just come back from finishing a small sewing job. Upon hearing this, Guo Aiying's mind filled with many questions. She began to look at Sheng with a confused expression and asked what he was talking about. Sheng looked away, started to gaze outside through the train window, and with a cheerful smile replied that she was going to find out what he was talking about very soon. Not far from the area, where the two train tracks were very close to each other, there was a post in the middle to which two people were tied. These people were the werewolf and Tan Fei. Now their whole bodies were tied against the post. Several minutes later, both regained consciousness and began to struggle to break the rope but were unable. They did not know what was happening or why they could not free themselves, questioning if this rope was made of gold. Tan Fei and the man looked ahead and their eyes filled with fear upon seeing what was approaching. Two high-speed trains going in opposite directions appeared and far from running over them, passed by the side. But once they reached just where they were, something happened. Someone extended their hand, and while it was surrounded by a purple energy, they thought it was almost time. This person was none other than Sheng, who was sitting in the train seat. He crossed his legs, and while resting his head on his arm, began to extend his hand towards them. and with a calm look decided that it was time to start the show. Sheng activated his spiritual power, and the rope that was around Tan Fei's body transformed into energy and one end shot towards the train. Upon seeing this, she was left speechless and her eyes filled with fear. She couldn't believe that the rope had moved on its own. The rope moved towards the train until it wrapped around the front part. The train began to move at high speed, creating tension in the rope. Tan Fei opened her mouth and started to drool. Her eyes filled with panic as she realized what was about to happen. The tension that the trains created in the rope massacred Tan Fei and the werewolf, causing both to lose their lives in an instant. It had already fallen night and the moon was high in the starry sky. The tension that the trains had created was so strong that their bodies were cut into small pieces. Sheng intertwined his hands, began to look to one side, and with a lost gaze thought that this could also be considered a modern version of execution by parts. In reality, he had done this so that it would be a serious warning for the Lion Country, making it clear that whoever dared to offend Sheng would be punished. While he was distracted, Guo Aing, who had one hand behind her back, appeared, saluted, and with a serious look informed that she had just heard a strange sound, and for security reasons asked if he wanted her to call a helicopter to go directly to Kyoto province. Upon hearing her voice, Sheng came out of his trance, began to observe her and remained thinking in silence. Several seconds later, he closed his eyes and with a smile replied that no. He peeked his head a little over the side of the seat, began to point at her with his finger, and with a serene expression revealed that right in the place where the two trains had crossed, 2 people had died, asking her to remember to send someone to clean the area. Upon hearing this, Guo Aing was somewhat confused but responded with an understood. At the same time, at the headquarters of the Black Magic Society, Jay fell on his butt against the ground, and his eyes filled with surprise. He did not know what was happening. In front of him was a screen with the photographs of Tan Fei and the werewolf. A warning symbol appeared indicating that they had died. Jay, who was lying on the ground, was terrified to see that the life signs of demons number 6 and 7 had disappeared. Behind him stood the woman in the red dress. She panicked, began to observe the screen, and remembered that the 10 great lords of the demon pillars were almost divine beings. Each could control a body of an extraordinarily powerful beast. All the impressive achievements that Society of Black Magic had accomplished had been thanks to them. Jay started to sweat and couldn't help but begin to feel fear. His eyes filled with terror as he recalled that barely one day had passed and 3 great demons had already fallen, wondering if Guo had mobilized a powerful warrior of saint level. The woman began to sweat, and with a lost look she refuted this theory since the 3 great martial saints had no deep relationship with the target. And the army also did not have martial saint level experts in its ranks, so there was only one possibility left. They had misjudged the strength of the target. He did not have the level of a general but that of a marshal. Upon hearing this, Jay's expression changed. He could not believe that Sheng had the level of a martial saint at just 20 years old. This was something that broke the rules. He was a prodigy in martial arts. Jay's eyes filled with despair. He did not know what to do now since they had already lost 3 of the first 10 demonic pillars. Even if this mission generated benefits, it would not be able to compensate for the losses. He thought it would be better to stop the plan. The woman began to point at the screen with her finger. She started observing Jay and explained that it was better to accept losses than to cancel the mission, since if they did not finish off Sheng, nobody guaranteed that after becoming stronger he would not come hunting them down in society from black magic. Jay, who was sweating like a madman, turned his head towards her and with a confused expression asked if it was better to contact the organization immediately for support. The woman clenched her fist tightly and her body began to emit a golden energy. With a look full of hope she replied that no, since they still had demon number 4, Sakina. With her strength, they were going to be able to kill the target. Jay put his hand on top of his head, started shaking his head and felt frustrated since the organization had not given them Sakina's contact. At that moment, the woman intertwined her hands, closed her eyes, fell to her knees on the ground and revealed that it was not necessary since Sakina had always been with them. Upon hearing this, Jay turned his head towards her and with a confused look began to wonder what she was talking about. The woman opened her mouth and started screaming, invoking the 4th pillar of the demon called Sakina. Not long after, she lost consciousness. At that moment, a hand came out of the woman's mouth, and upon seeing this, Jay was terrified and speechless. He did not know what was happening. A head full of drool began to come out of the woman's mouth. Several seconds later, Sakina, a blonde woman, came out of the woman's mouth, causing her head to explode. She landed in front of the screen and approached Jay. He fell to his knees on the ground and couldn't help but start to feel fear. She had a tattoo on her leg. She asked Jay for the coordinates of the target. Jay, who was scared shitless, remained silent. While Sakina's body was surrounded by a golden aura, she gave Jay the order to send her the coordinates of the target. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.